These are some games that stood out to me from this last month, June of 2026. First, Nippon Zaibatsu. I've played the original Nippon on Board Game Arena a few times, and I remember talking about my thoughts on this new, updated version last year when it was kickstarted. This month, I got to play the game, and my initial impression was that it's as good of a game as its previous iteration, with some added features that make it a little bit more flexible for players to achieve what they want to. In Nippon, you play as economic conglomerates in Japan's industrial age, and the game utilizes an interesting action selection mechanism of choosing colored resources or workers, which determine what bonuses you get when you recall them back during a consolidation phase. All the while playing an area majority game mixed with contract fulfillment. What's different here is that you have added bonuses to the consolidation phase that can come from investing in ships, which is reworked from the original version to tie in with this bonus, as well as new and varied contracts and factories to build. I can't say that I'm so familiar with the original Nippon that I found the changes noticeable, but overall I still had fun, and I would recommend this game if you enjoy a tight, economically driven Euro game that can play in about 2 hours. I know an expansion is on Kickstarter right now, so more variability is coming to the game soon, and it looks pretty good. The next game is Habitats. I was interested in playing this game because I remember hearing that this inspired the creation of Nova Luna, Uwe Rosenberg's first of many Thailand games back in 2019, different than the polyomino games that he's made in recent years. In Habitats, you move a marker in the shape of a jeep around a grid of wildlife tiles, which you arrange on your tableau to fulfill requirements that each tile has inherently to provide points, as well as trying to achieve public goals provided each game. I feel that this game was more tight in the sense that with Nova Luna, Framework, and other Rosenberg tile layers, it's more straightforward to know how to draft the tiles and what to draft from, which is basically a simple market in a lot of those games. Whereas a part of the puzzle in Habitats is maneuvering your Jeep along a grid of tile offerings, and the stipulation is that you can move like side to side and forward, but not backward. And so this grid also offers is also the same grid that the other players are playing on as well. So there is a potential because of how moving your Jeep works, as well as the other characters or other players in the game. There is a potential to be blocked off from certain tiles or to be too far away from a certain tile that you might need, as well as having a tile be refreshed somewhere else on the board that you might need, and once again, not being able to get there. But I think that's what makes this game fun in a challenging way. I got vibes of like games like Cascadia, where I feel like the game itself can feel pretty tight when it comes to the puzzle, and you're waiting for certain animals and certain tiles to pop up and hopefully be there on your turn to be able to continue your making your corridors or fulfilling your animal objectives. And so with Habitats, I feel like there is an opportunity for some forward thinking and hopefully laying down a path of tiles in front of your Jeep or next to your Jeep to be able to go in a line and figure out where you play them on your tableau to be as efficient as possible. But I can see at times why it might be tough to do so. And then having a more streamlined experience, such as with Framework, such as with Nova Luna, makes that drafting experience less interactive in a negative sense without as much blocking, and then just introducing the luck of the draft in those games and fulfilling that puzzle. But if you do prefer that more challenging experience, I think that is more akin to the tile drafting that is seen in Cascadia, then Habitats might be one that would interest you. The next game is Earth, and actually the expansion for this is what is featured. It is the Animal Kingdom expansion, the second major expansion that came out this past month. I got to play with my friend Alex, who's also a big fan of the game, who has been on this channel. Animal Kingdom introduces some animal cards with special abilities that you can utilize during the game. And it essentially opens up some additional possibilities to earn points by using your leaf tokens. With the first expansion, Abundance, you could use those leaf, you can discard them essentially for seeds. And so that provided an additional way to, in case you weren't able to pursue certain milestones in those base objectives in time compared to some other opponents who perhaps might have drawn a little bit better into some of those objectives. That opened up a smaller possibility to be more flexible with what you could do, like for resources, as well as being able to draw cards that you would need for your purposes. But in this Animal Kingdom expansion, you open that flexibility even further with these new animal powers. You have one or two of these animal powers per game on your own tablet or next to your tableau, and you're actively building out your tableau to pursue some of these actions. They're not necessarily milestones, but whenever you use or discard a leaf token, you can take the actions of these animals, which come in a variety of different actions. But for example, in the one game that I played, I had a yak, I believe, or a Highland cow, which moved around the board. And if there was a tree or a stump on it, I could add additional stumps to them or take them away. I forget which one was which, but there was also the eagle, which would fly from one treetop to another and take that treetop added to the card, and it scored, like 6 points or something like that, um, pretty steadily compared to perhaps the 2 or 3 points that a treetop might provide in the card on your tableau itself. And so you had a really cool opportunity for these combinations of animals to have a different option to pursue in case the cards you are given and drawn into don't follow the major milestones, which do offer a lot of points throughout the game. All in addition to, of course, the terrain cards and other combinations that offer a lot of points. And so this was a really good addition to the game. I really enjoyed this new way to approach Earth, and to make it a little bit more open to having options to pursue for points. And on a side note, we did play with the disaster module that was also offered on the Kickstarter. And it allows essentially from a deck of cards, these disaster cards, two of which go to your hand and you can play them at any time. But they, according to the rules, feature a light take that mechanism where you play the card, everyone loses a certain number of resource or type of resource, cards, sprouts, etc. But you could also target someone to lose even more of that resource. And so, for the most part, I did not feel compelled to play these cards because it felt a little out of place. It makes sense thematically, but like it felt out of place in what Earth originally provides in the experience of a very positive uh, type of interactive experience. And so I felt like the disasters really did feel targeted. They felt pretty punishing, even though it said it was light. And I think it might be light because everyone kind of suffers because of them. And, maybe if these were instead played as events rather than as cards that you hold onto your hand until you play against someone, then it might have felt a little bit better. In addition to, like, I feel like there must be a better way to approach a more catch up type of mechanism other than using cards in a take that format to be able to decrease the resources of someone who might feel like they're edging ahead of everyone else in the game. And so I unfortunately did not enjoy this small module. I wouldn't recommend playing with it if you don't like any take that mechanism. But the Animal Kingdom expansion was really good and I would recommend, and I will play with it again. Next is Resafa. So this was Suhi's game from last year, I believe, or 2 years ago, made available at my local library. So I picked up that copy, and played it. I had been unmotivated to play this game before since it boasts a somewhat generic theme. of trading in the Middle East. It features a lot of classic Euro tropes and mechanisms like track advancement and resource management. Uh, you know, kind of a mini game type of experience on this board where you're interacting with canals or traveling across the map or you know advancing on tracks. And so it felt pretty generic. But the most unique thing about this game is the combination of cards that you play from your hand. So you have like cards that have two actions on them, but also two different colors. And you play the card, do choose one of those actions. You also choose the corresponding color, which allows you to either choose a card from a market, a different set of market cards to play for a one-time ability or to save an ability for later, or to advance on those aforementioned tracks. And so I felt like that puzzle of utilizing those action cards in a efficient way was the best part about this game. I feel like it's trying to accomplish the variability that was seen in other card-driven games of Suhis like Underwater Cities and Evacuation. I definitely prefer the theme and mechanisms of those other games. They're more enticing to me to put myself in a more tableau building experience with certain pieces very similar to Agricola as you have with Underwater Cities, or to be having that really tight economic experience of evacuating from one planet to the other, utilizing different cards, individualized cards to combine actions with. And so those games, I think, did a better job at uh, motivating me or having me feel challenged and yet still having a good time with it. The puzzle of Resafa was interesting with those cards, but it ultimately does not live up to the same standards that I had with those other two games. But I'm glad that I experienced it at the very least. Next is Horrified. So I got to play this for the first time. So it's been nearly 10 years since this game released. I got to play this with some work friends, and I feel like this game was one that I should have played years ago. This is what I feel like is a classic game now, a cooperative experience very similar to how Pandemic plays. But I really do appreciate the variability that comes with the different monsters. You're essentially choosing two monsters to play against, and you you have the very basic, I guess, motivations to go around a map, pick up items, and deliver items to certain portions of the map, which are dependent on the monsters that you start with, and they each have certain objectives that you're trying to meet. But those objectives are pretty fun and pretty thematic to what those monsters are. In addition to like having different villagers be revealed and trying to save them from being beaten down by the monsters, right? And so I feel like it offers more variability in terms of what the puzzle is going to be like compared to Pandemic without its expansions or different iterations of the system. And so I really enjoyed Horrified, and I wouldn't mind playing it again. Next is Bunny Kingdom Town. So this is a nice surprise that I found on Board Game Arena. You have Bunny Kingdom, the game by Richard Garfield, which is a pretty fun game. I really enjoyed this on Board Game Arena as well. But you're using drafting cards to essentially play out a kingdom on a shared board and scoring points with an area majority type experience. This new two-player experience of that game condenses the board down to a smaller version, and it has more of an open type draft system rather than a closed one in the original game. It's definitely a quicker experience, of course. It's only a two-player game as well, but it has a lot of fun buildings that you can try to pursue. Different ways to score points. You're trying to sometimes build out a neighborhood and build out close to each other, but hopefully drafting the right buildings as well as the right permits, which tell you which quadrant you can play in, can make or break your game in some fashion. So I think that this game was really fun. In the last game that I played, though, I thought I was doing pretty well, but I got wrecked by my opponent, who scored like over 100 points compared to my score. And so there is some strategy to this game. I think I would love to continue exploring this game and seeing how you would potentially score so well in this game. So despite its condensed, two-player version of this game that may or may not be as heavy or as strategically interesting as the original game, I think there is some depth to this game. So feel free to check that out on BGA. Then finally, the last two games I'm going to talk about together, it's Nokosu Dice and TRICKTAKERs. So the final two games were played by me recently at a local game day hosted by our local city convention. And so I got together with some friends. We played games like Arcs and Lowlands, which were really fun. But in between, we played these two trick-taking games. And so Nokosu Dice, which has been on my radar for quite some time, utilizes dice, different colored dice, as the name suggests, to create new cards, or quote unquote cards that you add to your hand to play as tricks, which are public information, with the stipulation as well that the last dice left on your board is the bid for how many tricks you earn. And if you meet that bid, you score a lot more points. And Trick Takers is a more fast paced game with 3 rounds of 5 tricks each. But based on the hand you draft, you do also draft different characters that are available each game that allow you to play the trick taking game a little bit different, such as adding new cards to your hand, swapping out your hand for an entirely different one, allowing for, a character allows for bids to happen as well. Another one allows you to draw and discard cards, or even switch the order in what trumps what in a trick. So there's a lot to take in for such a small and quick game. I thought it was really well done, though, and I can see this being a really big step up in complexity in certain ways compared to other straightforward trick takers. Beyond the base strategy that I feel like you are, managing your hand with in trick takers in general. I would say Nokosu Dice was my preferred of the two. It felt very streamlined and yet really strategic with how the dice drafting and playing of cards felt. I really enjoyed that experience. But both games, though, piqued my interest more than the recent trick-taking game I reviewed, Shards of Creations, which is a very straightforward game without a lot of uniqueness to it. You can go out and check my video with my thoughts on that game as well, which I played this last month. But because I played Nokosu Dice and Trick Takers, I feel a little bit more energized to perhaps explore and be open to other trick-taking games in the future. And those were really fun. So those are some of the highlights. I obviously played a lot more games, but so those are some of the new and unique and interesting experiences and games that I played in June of this year, 2026. Let me know if anything that you played stood out to you, or if you played any of these games, let me know your thoughts on them. As always, thank you for watching and hope you have a great day. I'll catch you on the next one.